So today we're going to dive into a really personal story called Chasing Ducks. And it's a journey that really kicks off with two pretty big childhood mysteries, this recurring dream about escape and a strange premonition that honestly shaped a young man's entire life.
Okay, so it all starts with this dream. As a little kid, the author would chase ducks, like kids do, but in his dreams, the whole thing got flipped. Suddenly, people were chasing him, and right when he was about to get caught, he'd just start flapping his arms and fly away. Totally safe. He always escaped. It's this really powerful image of soaring above it all, and believe me, it comes back in a big way later on.
And then you've got the second mystery. This one, number 21. It just kind of hung over his whole youth. He had this deep, unshakable feeling that his life, as he knew it, was just going to stop when he turned 21.
So you have these two things running in the background of his life, the dream and this premonition about turning 21. And they really set the stage for what becomes a huge, life-changing transformation. Let's dig into how it all unfolds.
What's really striking is just how certain he was about this. I mean, this wasn't some casual thought. It was a core belief, something he'd even tell people about. It created what he later called a complete void, a blank space where his future should have been.
And then, in 1991, with his 21st birthday getting closer and closer, everything changed. A single Christmas card that was actually late shows up in the mail. And this one letter, it would completely change the entire course of his life.
And things happen fast. The late Christmas card from some guy named Jack Edel leads to a phone call. And that phone call reveals an entire family, a whole side of his family he had no idea even existed. This all leads up to this incredible family reunion on Memorial Day weekend.
Can you even imagine that? He grew up with just his mom and his sister, and then boom, suddenly he's an uncle, a brother-in-law. He just had this huge, warm family that welcomed him in, no questions asked. He said it was like finally belonging, even with people who were total strangers just days before. It was the first real step in filling that void he'd felt for so long.
Now this new family, they didn't just give him an earthly connection. They introduced him to a spiritual one that would completely redefine everything. And this is where that premonition about age 21 really comes to a head.
Just look at the contrast here. Before, you have this feeling of emptiness, no future past 21, just a big hole. And then after, it's replaced by an instant family, a new faith that promised him a place in heaven. A whole new life was just beginning.
And here is the twist. That premonition, it actually came true, just not in the way anyone would have thought. It wasn't a physical death he was sensing all those years. It was a spiritual one. The old Mark, the guy with no future, he really did die at 21, making way for someone completely new.
So how did this massive change actually happen? Well, believe it or not, it all started with a simple rule from his new brother, Jack. You see, the family spent every Sunday on their boat, which sounded amazing to the author, but there was a catch. No church, no boat. If you wanted to go on the boat, you had to go to church first. The boat won, and week after week, he found himself sitting in a pew, listening to sermons about God's love.
This newfound faith wasn't just something he thought about. It became a call to action. Almost right away, he threw himself into serving other people, and it just a ton of different ways.
His life just became this whirlwind of service. He was doing childcare, leading youth groups, coaching basketball, helping widows with their groceries, volunteering with homeless kids, working at a food pantry. I mean, the list goes on. And what's really amazing is that for part of this time, he was technically homeless himself, living out of a motor lodge. He didn't see any of this as a chore, though. For him, it was like being in training. He called it boot camp or training for God's Olympics. He was building spiritual muscle through all that service, plus daily Bible study and even intense periods of prayer and fasting, one time for up to 20 days. He was all in.
But this new life, built on this amazing foundation of family and faith, it wasn't going to be without its trials. In fact, his biggest test was going to come from inside the very family that had brought him into this new world.
All right, so the conflict, as the author tells it, started with a new business idea called Dish by Design. When his brother's wife, Kathy, wouldn't fund it, he stepped up and put in the first $3,000. But what happened next was a lot of family drama, and it ended with a really serious accusation that he had stolen money. Now, the church stepped in to mediate, found no evidence of any theft, but the business was shut down anyway, and a piece of that family relationship was shattered.
So after all that, you'd probably expect him to be angry, right? But his response, or at least how he describes it, is pretty incredible.
Despite everything, he says he never fought back, never wished her anything bad. He frames it as a test of his faith, choosing to rise above it all.
So, after everything, the dreams, finding a family, the spiritual rebirth, and then this really painful conflict, what's the big takeaway? For the author, it all comes down to one single powerful idea.
And that's it. That's his core belief. He sees one single thread connecting everything in his faith, and that thread is love. He says it's the guiding principle for everything he does, even when facing really difficult situations.
And this really brings the whole story full circle, doesn't it? His calling, the way he sees it, is to serve people and build them up. The pain he went through didn't stop that mission. If anything, it made it stronger. He insists that he holds love, not hate, for the people he feels have wronged him.
So, this whole story leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. It's a journey where the absolute hardest challenges become a critical part of a person's life purpose. And it makes you wonder, how can our own greatest tests become our greatest testimonies?